Chapter 81 Battle Colosseum. 5 days later, in the hidden underground chamber, Maximus looked at the ongoing rune inscribing process. Initial virtual Colosseum complete, Tier 0 to 5. Battleground map calibrating. Battle of the Ancients initializing. The Ether Core, after 8 days, finally stopped vibrating, and Maximus had consumed 13 top magic crystals just to inscribe this unfinished virtual Colosseum. Please insert name. After some thinking, he named it the Battle Colosseum. There are 2 modes of Battle Colosseum. The Battleground, where players battle against each other either in 1v1 or 5v5 matches. And the Battle of the Ancients, where you battle against the AI program. This is where he consumed most of the top-grade magic crystals, as inscribing this AI powerhouse required purer and more mana. What was finished now was the battle AI for Tier 0 to 5. As for higher tiers, it was still ongoing, but he estimated that it would take at least a month to finish the battle AI for Tier 6. Tier 6 is on a different level, as it is the threshold between mages and knights, making them equal. This special realm is achieved by combining the body and soul, making that mages and knights are on equal in strength and lifespan. After he finished naming it, he inputted the rewards. After all, without rewards, it would only be a game. With rewards, it would be a way of life, the dream that you want to achieve in your life. The first reward he thought of was all kinds of rare resources for mage and knight cultivation. By setting this, it would provide invisible benefits for talented individuals, making them stronger than others. The second reward was titles and land. After he came to rule the entire Sunburn Plateau, all noble titles were abolished, leaving the powerless nobles frustrated. These titles and land rewards held no real power. The land was spiritual land for farming and building houses. You know, spiritual land is usually rented monthly, and the houses people live in can't be arbitrarily changed, and they still need to pay a yearly fee. Of course, it is affordable and cheap, otherwise, people wouldn't have the means to live in it. But with these rewards, they would fully own the land and be able to do whatever they liked. As for the titles, they would provide special privileges, such as tax discounts and other special benefits that would surely flatter these former nobles. After setting these rewards, he set the price for these rewards, which were the battle points players would receive when they won a battle. In the Battle of the Ancients, opponents were divided into tiers 0 to 5, with varying difficulties, easy, medium, hard, and nightmare. For tiers 0 to 5, players would receive battle points in increments of 10. For example, Tier 0 would earn 1 BP, Tier 1 would earn 10 BP, and Tier 2 would earn 100 BP. Regarding difficulty levels, easy would earn 1x the BP, medium would earn 2x the BP, hard would earn 3x the BP, and nightmare would earn 10x the BP. After setting all the parameters and configurations, he decided to import the Battle Colosseum to the Ether Core. In the tavern, in broad daylight, Silver Adam was still drinking. For Silver Adam, whether it was day or night made no difference. The only thing that could stop him from drinking was being knocked out of sleep, which, for him, was the best feeling. While he was drinking, his personal token vibrated. New update. Seeing that there was another new update, Silver Adam became intrigued. Personal information. Moonlight Forum. Moonlight Library. Moonlight Bank. Battle Colosseum new? As he clicked on the Battle Colosseum, a pop-up appeared. Do you want to upload your consciousness? Read instruction manual.
Upolat conscience?
Interesting, as Silver Adam smiled. You see, consciousness-based functions on personal tokens are only available in the Origin domain and some rich domains in the Arcane continent. That's because this kind of function consumes an enormous amount of mana. For example, in Moonlight Kingdom, with a multitude of Tier 0 to 3 mages and knights using the Battle Colosseum, it would cost 1 top magic crystal per year just to keep it running. One can't even fathom how much mana it would cost in the Origin domain, where there live billions of trillions of people with the most powerful and talented individuals in the entire domain. Fortunately, the rich mana in the Origin domain offsets the cost of running this kind of virtual world. This brat's teacher is quite interesting, as Silver Adam murmured. Thinking that Maximus' teacher is the one who made or instructed the making of this virtual function. Without further ado, he uploaded his consciousness. As for reading the instruction manual, who in their right mind would read an instruction manual? Alistair, who was having breakfast with his sister Amara before heading to a Tier 1 forest to earn money and train, was interrupted by an update on his personal token. After reading the instruction manual, a battle intent shone through Alistair's eyes. I think you should take a look at. Battle? Battle points? Rewards? Alistair questioned himself. Isn't this made for me? Alistair murmured excitedly, which startled Amara, who was sitting next to him. What's going on, brother? You've been on your token for a while now, Amara asked. Don't you know about the update? No, my token is in my room. Then go get your token. I'll quickly earn our resources, Alistair excitedly said without explaining anything, and he headed towards his room. As the instruction manual said, you would be immobile when you uploaded your consciousness. Maximus stood in front of a Tier 1 official mage with nightmare difficulty, watching as the opponent disintegrated. I nearly lost, Maximus said to himself, patting his chest. In his first battle, the Tier 0 apprentice knight with nightmare difficulty was easily defeated by him, thanks to his transcendent Tier 0 soul spell mastery. But in the second battle with the official mage opponent just now, he had almost failed. If it weren't for his consciousness, which was already Tier 3 nascent mage, he wouldn't even have time to react. In this virtual world, the mana and spells you use are the same. The only difference is consciousness, as it can't be suppressed with the current state battle Colosseum. In fact, winning a battle with a nightmare opponent would make you practically invincible in the same tier and could easily fight across tiers. So, he should be contented that at least his strength is not made of water and he can still be invisible at the same level albeit lower. But for him, a transmigrator with such an overpowered cheat, the fact that he nearly lost was embarrassing. By the looks of things, he could only defeat Tier 2 opponents of high difficulty next. To avoid losing, he upgraded his previous spells one by one to Transcendent Mastery, which cost him more than 10,000 life points. Ready for the next battle, he clicked on a next. Maximus found himself in a forest environment, facing off against a Tier 2 Great Knight. When he fought the Tier 0 Apprentice Knight earlier, his assumption that knights were weaklings was quickly overridden. He realized there was no essential difference in strength between knights and mages. His preconceived notion was a result of encountering mostly weak opponents, leading him to underestimate the knight's profession. Furthermore, there are 10 times more knights than mages, so it is more likely to encounter weak knights than trash mages. Before the countdown of the battle is finished, Maximus cast a Tier 2 barrier spell on himself. 3, 2, 1, 0. Fight! The battle commenced. Suddenly, the knight opposite him vanished from sight. So it's an assassin-type knight? Maximus grinned with excitement. Slash! A slash appeared behind Maximus, nearly shattering his barrier. Fortunately, his transcendent mastery of the barrier spell held strong against the opponent's perfect mastery. Maximus retaliated with an indiscriminate fire bombardment, but the assassin knight immediately retreated after delivering a strike, avoiding the fiery onslaught. Determined to gain the upper hand, Maximus focused his concentration and unleashed a detection spell. With newfound awareness, he cast a wooden vine-binding spell, attempting to trap the elusive assassin knight. However, the knight proved to be as slippery as a fish, teleporting behind Maximus once again. The assassin knight swiftly moved around him, slashing 3 times in quick succession. The barrier broke under the pressure of the first strike. Fortunately, he managed to hold against the second strike, thanks to his quick supplementation. However, on the third strike, unable to react in time, he could only instinctively dodge, narrowly avoiding but losing an arm in exchange. Fuck! Maximus screamed in pain. Though it was a virtual battle, the sensations were all too real, evoking his combat instincts. He cast a healing spell to mend his wounded arm, swiftly restoring it to its previous state. Now fueled by anger, Maximus conjured a raging fire that continually enveloped him, forming an impassable barrier. Let's see how you can get near me now, Maximus taunted, his arrogance evident. With the raging fire surrounding him, the knight assassin struggled to approach, rendered passive by the inferno. He can do this indiscriminate bombing of spells because Transcendent Mastery only consumed 1,000th of mana required than normal. After some time, employing a combination of indiscriminate bombardments, fort-like spell frequency, and his Transcendent Mastery, Maximus managed to exhaust the knight assassin, ultimately delivering the fatal blow. Ha ha ha. Easy. Maximus laughed and boasted, reveling in his victory. Although he acknowledged his shortcomings in combat, he couldn't accept defeat. Furthermore, until now, he hadn't used his more than 20x mana amplitude, keeping it sealed. Had he used his mana amplitude, his opponent wouldn't have stood a chance and break his mana barrier, regardless if he stood still during the duration of the battle. Should I increase the difficulty? Maximus pondered, questioning himself. Even with Nightmare's difficulty he can't help but still cheat, preventing him from truly enhancing his battle consciousness. He contemplated creating next-level difficulty, one that would incorporate transcendent mastery and mana amplitude based on the opponent. This way, he would be forced to train himself, leaving him with no other choice but to rely on his skills and cheat less. Reflecting on it, he decided to call it the invincible difficulty since no matter how high one's battle IQ, it would be useless without transcendent mastery and the corresponding mana amplitude. Satisfied with his victory over the Tier 2 Nightmare difficulty opponent, Maximus clicked Next. Chapter 82 Sword God? In a vast plain, the third round began. Maximus's opponent at this moment is a Tier 3 nascent mage Nightmare difficulty. With his previous experience, he was getting the hang of the battle. Sure enough, after a few exchanges, he defeated his opponent. Satisfied with his battle this time, he exited the battle Colosseum. On the castle terrace, he saw his children watching on a virtual screen of their brother Liam fighting. The Battle Colosseum had a live stream function and a reward function. "How is your brother doing?" Maximus sat next to them and asked. He was ranked 1 with 360 BP at the start. After the evaluation in the Battle of the Ancients, Max proudly said, "Oh?" The ranking is divided from rank 0 to 9 with 10 to 99 BP for rank 0, 100 to 999 BP for rank 1, and so on. Who is his opponent? Maximus got curious and looked at the virtual screen. Liam's opponent was a middle-aged man who was also a knight using an axe. They were evenly matched, with the middle-aged man having more experience and Liam having a greater variety of techniques. But unfortunately for Liam, after fighting like his father, bursting with a variety of techniques without substance, he grew exhausted and was baited. "Ha ha ha, you're too young, boy," the middle-aged man bragged. Liam's virtual avatar looked like himself but in the image of a teenager, so the middle-aged man didn't know that he was fighting a 7-year-old kid. Liam, on the other hand, just gritted his teeth as he slowly disappeared. "How's the fight, son?" Maximus said in a mocking tone. Although Liam's fighting style was the same as his, unfortunately, he didn't have transcendent mastery, so his mana was quickly consumed. "It's not bad?" Liam didn't know what to say for a while. "It's good, brother. Your opponent is just too old." Max on the side cheered. Liam felt consoled. Seeing that his son wasn't too sad about the loss, Maximus looked at the battle ranking. Silver Adam, rank 5 to 6,745,960. Light Hans, rank 4 to 634,860. Alistair, rank 4 to 337,760. Mike, rank 3 to 34,860. His ranking wasn't there as he had it hidden. After all, it's embarrassing if someone was on top of him. Silver Adam, who was on top, was basically the strongest in his kingdom, so it's no surprise. Even with his current state as a Tier 4 Sky Knight, Silver Adam, a former Tier 6 Stellar Knight, could defeat all opponents easily. And Maximus also noticed Alistair, the one he thought was a protagonist. "Weird," Maximus unconsciously murmured. He could understand fast training, but how could Alistair climb all the way to rank 4? Was he a reincarnation or something? For a long time he had noticed that there was something peculiar about this place. First, why was he transmigrated exactly at this place? Based on the system recording, there was something that attracted it here. As for what it was, he didn't know. Second, the cult. After a long time, he had only seen the Shadow God cult in the Cursed Continent. Even after he traveled to the Arcane continent, he learned that this place had become almost a forbidden land for believers. So why was there still a cult running rampant here? It was as if they were searching for something, but unfortunately, no one could answer his question right now. He could only shake his jumbled thoughts. Just as he was about to quit the battle ranking panel, he saw that Silver Adam was in an ongoing match. Earlier, Silver Adam was intrigued by the Battle Colosseum, but after fighting for a while, he grew bored. However, just as he was about to quit, he saw a reward that made his mouth water. Dragonfire Oak Heart, Tier 5, a legendary wine that combines the essence of a dragon's heart and the sacred wood of an elemental oak tree. Price 7 million BP. Unfortunately, even though he fought from rank 0 from easy to nightmare difficulty, he didn't earn enough points. From Tier 4, he couldn't defeat the nightmare difficulty no matter what he did, so his only hope was for someone to challenge him to a match. Just as he was thinking about who would be brave enough to challenge him, a notification came through. Alistair challenges you. Accept/decline? Silver Adam got suddenly excited. Finally, a savior he had been waiting for. Alistair, rank 4 to 337,760. A good baby who came to give me points, a Silver Adam said, and accepted the challenge, setting the bet at 300,000 BP. Alistair was in his room when he fought in the Battle Colosseum earlier. There was a rush of memories about battles in his head, making him almost invisible. As he fought in Battle of Ancient, his BP climbed all the way to rank 4. Unfortunately, the rush of memory was gone and he figured he needed more stimulation. Seeing that there were only 2 people ahead of him, he first challenged Light Hans. Light Hans, I don't fight with commoners, I think you should take a look at. Instead of getting accepted, he was mocked, which made his teeth itch. Light Hans was born arrogant, with his eyes set on top of the sky. Fighting with a commoner, even if it was a talent like him, went against his creed. He was an outright arrogant noble. He only participated in the Battle Colosseum because he saw the prize as noble titles and land. He hopes to bring back the past glory of the Hans family with his own hands. Since Light did not accept his challenge, Alistair set his sights on the top-ranked player. After a while he received a reply. Silver Adam accepted the challenge. Accept/decline. Seeing the extravagant bet, he realized he had no other choice. He needed this pressure to become stronger. In recent days, Alistair felt that something was about to happen and he needed to become stronger quickly. He trusted his instincts greatly. After accepting, he set the limit to Tier 1 Mage or Knight. With the memories that he just integrated, he felt that within the same tier, he was invincible. On the battlefield, filled with fire and blood, Alistair and Silver appeared. Thank you, brat, for the BP, as Silver said in gratitude. HMMP, we'll see about that, Alistair retorted, launching a swift attack with his sword. Oh? Another sword user, Silver thought as he watched the little kid attacking him. As the sword approached Silver, he dodged it using micro-movements. To an experienced fighter, it would appear as if the sword miraculously passed through his body. Alistair was not discouraged and fought even more vigorously. On the other hand, Silver treated the battle as mere child's play. Silver was grateful for the 300,000 BP, so he thought that he should teach a thing or two to this brat. He continued to dodge effortlessly, without moving from his spot. A surge of memories flooded Alistair's mind, showcasing various fighting styles and tactics he didn't even know were possible. After a few minutes of Alistair slashing his opponent, Silver finally moved from his position. Oh? Not bad, kid, Silver praised. Alistair's fighting style was improving at the speed of light, forcing Silver to get serious. But it's time to end this, Silver declared, raising his sword. He felt it was enough and was already thinking of drinking Dragonfire Oakheart that he was about to redeem. However, Alistair, sensing a great crisis, burst with greater power and unconsciously retreated. Having had enough of being on the defensive, Silver chased after his opponent. Alistair, at this moment, had already lost consciousness. He fought with all his might, using his instincts as the memory of his previous life was being integrated. With a clash of swords, Alistair was fighting Silver on equal ground without losing. Sword instinct? Silver was shocked that a brat was able to parry his sword. Sword instinct was a battle style of most maniac swordsmen who only had a sword in their hearts. However, for him such a way is meaningless. Wouldn't it be good to drink more? What more sword do you want? You can't eat it, can you? But looking at Alistair, who fought like a beast with his instincts, he was still impressed. Unfortunately, that's not enough, Silver said, stepping up his movements. Alistair received sword wounds all over his body, but despite the injuries, he continued fighting. Fortunately, the mana in his body healed the sword cuts and keep him from fighting. However, within a few more minutes, Alistair was finally out of mana. But during this time, he already digested a part of his previous memories and learned who he was in his previous life. I commend you for defeating me to this state, a mature voice and aura came from Alistair. Humph, you're just a brat. What can you do? Silver said mockingly, feeling a little annoyed that the fight had extended for a few more minutes. The entire time he hadn't gotten serious and was only using basic sword styles as he hoped this ignorant brat would learn a thing or two. I still have to thank you. If not for you, Alistair didn't finish his sentence as Silver Adam attacked him again. It looks like you're in a hurry to die, Alistair said seriously as he casually parried the sword. All right, brat, you've had enough, as Silver had reached his limit. He was still in a hurry to drink his dragonfire oak heart. These few minutes felt like torture to Silver Adam. He couldn't stand even a minute without having a sip of wine, and it's been a few minutes. If it weren't for the 300,000 BP that he treated as a tuition fee, he would have ended the fight in just a few seconds. He thought he should inform that brat Maximus to add props like a drink or something. Having enough, Silver Adam gathered all the mana in his body and slashed toward Alistair. This slash was his famous move, Atomic Slash, disintegrating every atom of his opponent out of existence. Alistair, who just got his memories of his previous life, seeing the sword coming at him, was still complacent, thinking it was just a normal attack. But as the sword approached, it split into 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Endless sword mirages came towards him. His body didn't have any mana, so he could only watch as the endless swords erased his virtual body from existence. Be proud, mortal. You have defeated this weakened sword god. Alistair thought as he gradually disappeared. Chapter 83, Preparing to Leave. Alistair emerged from the virtual world, his eyes shining with a cold light. Those muggles, wait for the great sword god to give you a surprise. Alistair murmured. He was Alistair Dawnblade, the revered sword god once worshipped by the entire Nexus continent. Or should he now refer to it as the Cursed Continent? Ha ha ha, those fogies are indeed scheming. Alistair laughed at the fate of the former Nexus continent. Drawing upon the memories within his body, he witnessed the once glorious Nexus continent reduced to the dust of history, now becoming the weakest continent in the current Ethereum realm. According to this body's memory, all of this was due to the death of gods which corrode the mana, which he found very amusing and contradictory. The ones responsible for the destruction of the Nexus continent and the corrosive mana were the mages and knights of the Arcane continent. In the early ages, the Nexus continent had shown signs of catching up to the Arcane continent due to their immortality, rendering them impossible to kill, which made them a threat to the overload of Ethereum realm. The immortal divinities of the Nexus continent were thus sealed by the powerhouse of the Arcane continent, assisted by the gods of the Divine continent. Seems like you failed to seal us. A few minutes ago. On the castle terrace, Maximus joyfully watched the battle between Silver Adam and Alistair, accompanied by his children. Father, the old man is so strong, Liam said admiringly from his seat beside Maximus. Yeah, but I find his fighting style boring, Max replied. No one responded to him except the monkey perched on his shoulder, which nodded in agreement. Shortly after, the scene unfolded, revealing Silver Adam executing his move Atomic Slash. Wow! So cool! While his children marveled at the impressive moves, Maximus's gaze remained fixed on the opponent, who seemed to be a different person. Could it be? Maximus pondered, wanting to confirm his suspicion. After the fight between the two, he connected to a part of his soul residing in Aethercore to access the monitoring array and observe Alistair. He witnessed Alistair muttering to himself as if possessed. Those muggles seems failed to seal us. After listening to Alistair's rumblings, he had more questions in his mind. What truly happened to the cursed content? He muttered, seeing that Alistair had finally calmed down and getting no further information. He cut his connection and programmed the monitoring array to focus on Alistair. Maximus got up ready to prepare, as he need to start preparing before he leave the kingdom. Regarding the danger in his kingdom, he wasn't overly concerned since a Tier 6 energy weapon was equipped there. As long as the monitoring array detected any danger, it would automatically annihilate it using the energy weapon. At night, Maximus is having dinner with his family. Tomorrow you should visit your family. We will depart for the Arcane continent in a week, Maximus announced. So soon? One of his wives exclaimed in surprise. The registration deadline is less than 2 months away, so we should hurry, Maximus explained. Furthermore, you will also register at the academy, he added, his tone serious. What? Us too? They asked in shock. Yes, of course. Otherwise? Maximus teased. But what about the children? There are various solutions. They can also go and learn, Maximus reassured them. Afterward, they discussed further plans for their time in the Arcane continent and what they should bring for their family before departing. In Erica's family house in Moonshadow City. You're leaving in a week? Francis, the former Baron of the Fairy Kingdom, Erica's father asked. Yes, father. Don't worry, I can still contact you through this token, Erica reassured him, waving her personal token. Oh? Then you should take care of yourself, Francis just sighed. What more can he say? His daughter was already someone cabbage and didn't listen to him. However, he was still satisfied with the son-in-law, as he was truly promising. Initially, he had only viewed this cheap son-in-law as a means to advance his noble title. Little did he know, the son-in-law would directly conquer the former fairy kingdom and, in just a few years, establish dominance over the entire sunburnt continent. Although Francis had heard that his son-in-law's success was largely attributed to his teacher, in the end, it was his son-in-law who effectively managed the kingdom. So, the difference was not significant. They continued to talk and bond, aware that it would be a long time before they met again in person. Erica even cooked a spirit dish she had recently learned for them. I think you should take a look at. In Hazel's family house, within a spacious courtyard. Hazel's brothers and sisters were either training or playing, their faces beaming with joy. It's truly a blessing for you to marry the Lord, Hazel's mother remarked, observing the positive changes in their family. They had never imagined such a life. For them, a bumper harvest was already all they could ask for. But now, they could have anything they desired without lifting a finger. Of course, they weren't idle. They trained diligently, and with sufficient supplies, most of them had become Tier 2 great knights. Take care of yourself. Hazel's mother embraced her daughter tightly as Hazel mentioned her departure. I know, mother. I trust my husband, Hazel replied with a smile, free of any worries about potential dangers. Maximus made his way to his office and summoned his chief officer, Doran. After a moment, there was a knock on the door. Good morning, Your Majesty, Doran greeted. I will be leaving for the Arcane continent in a week, Maximus declared straightforwardly. This? Doran didn't know what to say for a while. Don't worry too much. I will leave behind a mechanical clone that can connect with my personal token, allowing you to contact me, Maximus explained. That is reassuring, Your Majesty, Doran sighed with relief. In any case, I am here to give you this, Maximus said, producing a storage ring. Doran accepted the ring and used his consciousness to explore its contents. The storage ring was so vast that Doran couldn't fully scan its contents with his spiritual consciousness. It held an immense amount of resources, towering like mountains. What is this for, Your Majesty? Doran asked, puzzled. These resources are meant for the kingdom's development and provide cultivation resources for the people, Maximus clarified. While Maximus could leave behind a mechanical clone, it lacked spiritual capabilities and couldn't access a storage ring. As for the small part of his soul integrated with the Aether Core, it silently watched over the kingdom and wasn't suitable for this task. I will fulfill your will, Your Majesty, Doran pledged solemnly, refraining from talking in circles and saying he was not fit for the job. As for coveting the resources in the storage ring for himself, he didn't have much thought. Moreover, even if he had such thoughts, the mere notion of betrayal would be sensed by Maximus, regardless of the distance between them. Maximus had established the highest level of contract-binding agreement for important officials in his kingdom to prevent future troubles of this nature. Of course, they still maintained their freedom and autonomy, as long as they remained loyal. The benefits provided by Maximus were sufficient to deter any fleeting desires. After concluding his conversation with Doran, there was one more thing Maximus had to attend to before leaving his kingdom. Watching Doran leave, he typed something into his token. After a while, there was a knock on the door. Come in. The person who entered was Isabella, his supposed secretary. Isabella had lived up to his expectations, seamlessly coordinating all of his ministers to enhance their efficiency. As a result, Maximus only needed to engage in discussions once or twice a month. What do you need, Your Majesty? You could have just informed me through my token, Isabella said in an emotionless manner. You don't have to be so tense in the early morning, Maximus laughed, attempting to ease the atmosphere. Isabella merely rolled her eyes and casually took a seat on the sofa. They were somewhat acquainted, so such behavior wasn't considered rude. What can I do for you? She repeated. Observing Isabella sitting quietly, Maximus was mesmerized for a while. I will be leaving for the Arcane continent, and I want you to come with me, Maximus stated, maintaining a composed expression. That's what I'm supposed to do, Isabella responded as if it were a trivial matter. Of course, deep down, Isabella was excited. Going to the Arcane continent had always been one of her dreams. Now that she had become a nascent mage, she longed to fulfill those aspirations. Great. Do you need to make any preparations? No, everything I need is in my storage ring, Isabella replied, raising her hand to reveal a ring. I meant your family. Shouldn't you bid them farewell? Maximus inquired. There isn't much affection between us, only self-interest. If it weren't for their care when I was young, I wouldn't even bother with them, Isabella stated matter-of-factly, devoid of emotional fluctuations. What about me? Is your interest in me also purely self-serving? Maximus teased. Who knows? Isabella blushed and feigned ignorance. It's all right, time will answer that question, Maximus said, standing up and patting her head. Prepare well. We will leave in a week. Chapter 84 Arriving at Arcane Continent. 1 week later, Maximus and his family were boarding the flying boat. Did you say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa? Maximus looked at his children and asked. Yes. Are we not going back? Layla asked. We're going back, of course, Maximus reassured them, looking at his wives who were bidding farewell to their parents and family. How is it? He asked as he saw them coming back. It's all right, they said to call them often, one of his wives replied. Then we'll call them often, Maximus sighed. In the sky, Maximus and his family looked at the Moonlight Kingdom one last time. How long until we reach Elmer Island? Erica asked. We'll reach it in about 3 days. That's quite fast, she said in shock. Of course it's fast, Maximus said proudly. During this time, he took the opportunity to upgrade the flying boat's performance and speed to Tier 6. As for its protection capabilities, he also upgraded it to Tier 6. All in all, he spent 6 billion GP to turn his flying boat, the Tier 3 Aura Spectre, into a hidden beast in disguise. Normally, it would take at least 10 days to reach Elmer Island, but now it's only 3 days. 3 days later, Maximus came to the Tier 9 ship of EGCC parked in the harbor. He and his family walked towards the VIP lane. Take us to a Tier 3 VIP 9 room, Maximus instructed, presenting his EGGC VIP 9 token. Right away, sir. They were then led to their room. When is the ship leaving? Maximus asked. In about 2 days, sir. Maximus nodded in acknowledgement. It was indeed efficient. You know, the Tier 9 ship can accommodate tens of millions of passengers, yet it remains so efficient. More than 2 weeks later, they arrived at Lothmire City in the Arcane continent. We're finally here, one of his wives sighed as they disembarked from the ship. But I want to keep playing there, Max looked back at the ship they had just disembarked from. The 2-week journey had not been boring for them at all. The Tier 9 ship was like a mini-city with everything you could ask for. Of course, if you have money, otherwise, you can just stay in your room. Like him, the extravagant eating habits and activities of his children cost hundreds of thousands of low magic crystals, which amounted to hundreds of millions of GP. Fortunately, he was rich, as the monthly gold credits he can convert to the system reached more than 1 billion GP. Alright, we still have many things to do, Maximus said as they approached the city's gate. In the registration room. Just place your mana and spirit signature here, the steward said. His wives and children were familiar with this process since their kingdom tokens also functioned similarly. One by one, they registered. Just as they were about to leave. Excuse me, if you have contracted pets, they also need to be registered, the steward said, noticing that the kids carried beast pet rings. Come out, monkey, Max said as he summoned the monkey from his beast pet ring. His other children also brought out their pets and completed the registration process. After completing the registration process, Maximus arrived at the rented manor of his fake teacher. Speaking of this, the house had almost become a waste, as he had only lived in it for a few days. Where are we? Maximus asked. Is this your teacher's house? One of his wives inquired. Yes, Maximus replied, secretly using his fake teacher's personal token to open the manor formation. Come in, a voice from the void said. Of course, it was Maximus faking it. As they entered, a fairyland-like manor came into view. The abundance of mana caused the flowers and plants to flourish and created this picturesque scene. Come in, meet me alone, the voice from the void spoke again. Yes, teacher, Maximus slightly bowed, maintaining his expression even though he was merely talking to himself. I think you should take a look at. I need to speak with the teacher for a while. Just relax here, Maximus told his family as he walked towards the center of the manor. In the center of the manor, he manipulated the formation to isolate any form of investigation. Then he brought out the puppet clone that he had been eyeing before coming here. Guardian Puppet, a Tier 6 Guardian Puppet made using hybrid mechanics and alchemy technology, powered by natural mana and spirit crystals. It possesses perfect fighting and management skills. Price, 36 billion. After summoning the puppet, he changed its appearance to match that of his fake teacher. Next, he took out the upgraded Grimmer mask, which was already at tier 6. The purpose, of course, was for a perfect disguise. Although the puppet's appearance was impeccable, it lacked the essence of mana and spirit. However, the Grimmer mask, a tiered-down law artifact, could perfectly imitate and utilize mana and spirit up to tier 6. With the perfect camouflage, he set various instructions within the puppet's runic program. Fortunately, he was quite proficient in AI and runes, so it was relatively easy. The puppet also had its own AI, so he only needed to set its specific personality and tasks. After a while, Maximus emerged from the manor accompanied by an old man. "So these are your wives? You still have a keen eye as a student," the old man, his fake teacher, praised without a trace. "Of course. Who do you think am I?" Maximus bragged. "By the way, this is my teacher, Edward Williams, a tier 5 mystic mage and a tier 5 potioneering alchemist." "It is our honor to meet our husband's esteemed teacher," his wives respectfully replied. "Ha ha ha, indeed, you all possess a fairy spirit, as my student mentioned," old Edward said, stroking his beard. "Teacher, allow me to introduce them to you." After introducing his wives one by one, the old man turned his attention to his children, who were playing with their beast pets in the garden. "What adorable children! Say hi to Grandpa," Edward said, waving to the children. "Hello, Grandpa." Max, who was playing with the monkey, ran up to Edward, hugged him tightly, and playfully tugged at his beard. This almost gave his wives a heart attack. Although it was husband's teacher who knew if he had a bad temper. "Hey, don't pull my lovely beard, grandson," Edward playfully scolded, not taking things seriously. This brought a sigh of relief to Maximus's wives. Edward was a puppet faithfully following Maximus's orders, so of course, such a thing would not happen. At most, when his children misbehaved, Edward would teach them a lesson or two, but he would never harm or put them in danger. "Beard Grandpa. How are you?" Layla said, looking at the amicable grandpa. "What a polite young lady." "I'm doing all right," Edward said, patting Layla's head. "Really? I'm a polite and beautiful lady?" Layla's eyes lit up as she slowly twirled around as if showing off. In their family, they always called her a naughty or playful girl. Hearing someone refer to her as a polite lady made her happy. Yes, Edward nodded in agreement. "What about you?" Edward asked, turning to Maximus's other children. "I'm Liam." "Nice to meet you, Grandpa Edward." "I'm Lily." "Nice to meet you, Grandpa Edward." Both of them slightly bowed, displaying noble manners. Although their siblings had acted rudely earlier, as the eldest, they needed to show proper etiquette in front of outsiders. "Don't be too polite," Edward waved his hand dismissively. Then Maximus's other children greeted Edward one by one and returned to playing. As his children were occupied with theater activities, Edward invited them inside the manor. "When do you plan to go to the Arcane continent?" Edward asked as they took their seats. "We need to depart as soon as possible, preferably tomorrow," Maximus replied. The registration was only half a month away, so they were pressed for time. "In that case, I will arrange for fast transportation with the EGCC. It's also a good opportunity to visit my shop in Silverleaf Floating City," Edward suggested after some thought. "Oh? I heard it was still under construction months ago. How is it now?" Maximus inquired. Maximus wasn't aware when the shop had been completed, as he had been occupied with other matters upon his return to the cursed continent. "It was finished a month ago," Edward replied. After Maximus programmed the puppet with his identity and task, it automatically scanned for any omissions and followed up with necessary actions, making everything organized. Earlier, Edward scanned his token for any messages and notifications and noticed this part of the information. Upon learning that his master Maximus was heading to the origin domain, through a series of processing, it established the task that would be most beneficial to the host. In Silverleaf Floating City, there was the only teleportation array that could directly reach the origin domain. By staying in the city, he could respond to the host's call anytime, anywhere. Chapter 85 Silverleaf Floating City. The next day, the puppet Edward used his VIP 6 privilege to book a Tier 7 flying boat to go to Silverleaf Floating City. "Have you got everything you need?" Maximus asked his family as they got ready on the way. "Yeah, there isn't much. It's all in the storage ring," Irene replied. "Then let's go." Maximus, his family, and his puppet fake teacher Edward arrived at the flying boat prepared for them. 3 days later, the flying boat arrived in the vicinity of Silverleaf floating city.
"Wow!" Max exclaimed.
"How magical," Liam said. His wives and children were amazed by the floating city. Well, it's not much of a city, it's more like a continent. Just by looking at its sheer size, Maximus was sure it was much bigger than the Sunburnt Plateau. "Look at that big tower," Lila said, pointing to the tower in the center of the floating city. "I wonder how tall it is," Lily asked in wonder, as she can't see the end of the tower. "That's the Silverleaf Arcane Tower," introduced the middle-aged man who was in charge of them on this journey. "It is said that, if it weren't for the poor visibility, you could see that tower from any place in Silverleaf domain." "That's amazing," Maximus muttered to himself. He also wanted a tall tower overlooking his entire territory just by the side of his window. After a while, the flying boat docked near one of the islands that floated alongside the city. "I'm sorry, but this is the farthest I can take you. It's forbidden for private vessels to fly through the city," the steward of the flying boat said. "That's all right," Edward said. "Then we'll see you again," Edward said, leading them outside. "Bye-bye, Uncle," his little kids said as they waved their little hands. Coming out, they were greeted by a mass of people coming in and out of their flying vessels. "Do you need any service, esteemed guests?" a man asked as he saw them just getting out of the boat.
"How do we get to the city?"
Maximus asked as he tossed a piece of magic crystal. "You can take the special traction alchemy device after you register," the man said, examining the piece of magic crystal he had just received. "All right, then take us to the registration process," Maximus said, handing over 10 magic crystals. They then proceeded with a simple registration process, presenting their personal tokens and confirming the signature imprints on them. They were also asked which place in the outer city they would like to land after paying some fees. "Just stand in the center and wait for the others," the lady who was assisting them said coldly. They didn't say anything and silently made their way to the traction circle, waiting for the others. After a while, when there were about 100 people in the circle, the traction device lit up. With a flash, they were propelled toward the city, defying gravity in a split second. If it weren't for his powerful spirit, Maximus wouldn't even know how they had traveled. His wives and children were also shocked by the sudden change in environment, as if they had been transported to another world in the blink of an eye. While they were wondering what to do, their husband's teacher spoke up. "Follow me," Edward said, pulling out the token that projected a guide to his store. The part of the city where they landed was close to the shop, so after walking for a few minutes, they arrived at their destination. It was quite remote, which made it affordable. Otherwise, how could someone with a Tier 5 identity own property in the capital city of this domain?
"How is it?"
Maximus asked Edward, gesturing for him to remove the barrier that was blocking the shop. Edward, understanding his host's request, promptly removed the shop barrier, revealing a towering 3-story pavilion. "It's barely enough," Maximus thought, looking at the small shop. "Anyway, it's only for earning money, so the front isn't important," Maximus thought to himself. "The mana here is so dense, comparable to a Tier 7 mana environment," one of his wives, Rose, remarked. "Yes, I noticed that too. Even the wilderness outside the city has a Tier 6 mana environment," Angela, who was standing beside her, nodded in agreement. "Of course, it's the center of the Silverleaf domain, gathering all the mana from the entire domain. It's no wonder it has such dense mana," Maximus explained as he overheard their conversation. "Furthermore, have you noticed that we're only in the outer city? In the inner city, the mana environment is Tier 8. And as for the core of the city, where the ruler of the Silverleaf domain resides, it's an outright Tier 9 mana environment. It's really rich," Lily, who was becoming a money-loving child, exclaimed. "They didn't spend money to create this, it's all natural, unlike in the Cursed Continent," Liam countered his sister. To have a more in-depth conversation with Amara, his little crush, Liam asked his father for more basic knowledge about the situation in the Cursed Continent. "So Liam knows a little about the situation of the Cursed Continent. I think you should take a look at. Don't envy it too much. The Origin domain has Tier 9 mana throughout," Maximus said, intervening to stop their argument. "As the center of the Arcane Continent, or even the entire Ethereum realm. Origin domain can be said to have limitless resources, not to mention a Tier 9 mana environment."
"Wow! Are we going to live there?"
Lily asked, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, you just need to wait for your father and mothers to pass the Academy's tests," Maximus replied. "Not everyone can live in the Origin Continent. Only teachers of the Academies or powerhouses at Tier 8 and above can have a permanent address there. As for students, they can live there until they reach Tier 6 in their realm. Provided they achieve remarkable results in the Academy's tests, they would be provided with a temporary private land, where they can do what they wanted. That is also Maximus's goal. Otherwise, the kids can only live here. But he didn't worry too much because if he, with his cheat, couldn't achieve much in the tests, then who could? "Come inside, let's see the interior," Edward said, interrupting their conversation. The building had 3 floors, with the first floor being the main shop. The second floor served as the living and entertainment room as Maximus had specified. And the third floor houses the master bedroom along with various rooms such as a mechanic room and an alchemist room, etc. On the second floor, Maximus and his family were eating while his fake teacher tidied up the first floor, preparing to sell potions.
When are we going to the Origin Domain?
Erica asked as she ate. In a few days to a week. Let me scout the place for a while, Maximus said. He didn't know the environment there and he didn't want to bring his family without making any preparations. It was okay for them to stay here, and with the puppet providing protection as a guarantee, they would be safe from miscellaneous troubles. Noveler. As for something that could endanger their lives, that was out of the question. In over 1,000 years, there hadn't been a single abnormal death in the Silverleaf floating city. Actually, in any city in the Arcane continent there is not much danger. This was all thanks to the absolute rule of the top 3 organizations in the continent. As for their goal, Maximus didn't know, but as of now, because of such rules, there were already billions of trillions of people on the whole continent. Almost as many as the planets and stars in the universe in his previous world. The next day? "Take care, dear," his wife said. "Don't worry, I will just take a look and won't go to dangerous places," Maximus reassured them. "Take care, Daddy," his children said as they hugged him. "Thank you," Maximus said as he hugged each of them tightly. This was an unknown place for them, so being separated from the pillar of the family must be very stressful. "You should behave yourselves. If you need anything, come to Grandpa Edward," he said. "Don't worry, Dad. We'll be good kids," Max said, puffing out his little chest. Edward, the puppet, flickered his eyes, entering full protection mode. After walking for a while, Maximus boarded a flying boat. "Just take me to the dimensional teleportation terminal," Maximus said as he took out his token and inserted it into the payment port. Initiating. Dimensional teleportation terminal. An AI voice sounded. Private vehicles and flying were banned here, so the only option was to board these autonomous flying ships. After a few minutes, perhaps because this autonomous flying ship was connected to the city's formation, its speed almost reached that of a Tier 7 vehicle, despite being made of low-tier materials. As Maximus stepped out, he was greeted by a long line that stretched as far as his eyes could see. It must have been because it was close to the time of academy enrollment. After a moment of thought, he took out his token and contacted the EGCC personnel using his VIP privilege of on-call service. "Excuse me, do you know how I can skip the queue to go to the Origin Domain?" Maximus asked straightforwardly. "There are 2 ways, sir. First, you can pay 100,000 magic crystals and wait a day for all the VIPs to be teleported together. Second, you can pay 1 million magic crystals to use it right away," the personnel explained. "Then give me the second option," Maximus said, not having time to wait. Anyway, it was only equivalent to 1 billion GP, which he could easily afford. "Right away, sir. We will come to your position in a minute." After various procedures and payments, he was finally led to the teleportation formation, together with thousands of others. Then the formation lit up within a few seconds, transporting them to the center of the Arcane continent.